How goes it? This is Why So Religious here. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's see here. Send this out. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So today, I figure I'd just start this out by doing something that I've touched on before called in a video before I labeled dissonance or privilege for Christians, and I did one about about 1 second so I can there we go. Now I can see any comments. I wasn't sure. All right, so dissonance or privilege for Christians, and this really goes for like religions in general, in my opinion. If the person doesn't have to believe as the people had to believe 1,000 years ago, what's that say about you right now? In your belief. Uh, I hold the opinion, and I did it on the dissonance Judaism video also, where I talk about um, I believe that the Jews believed wholeheartedly in the creation story, that was like a list. And these were pretty simple people. They could understand list a lot better, you know. Just this is the event and how it happened in order. And it just I don't believe that they took it as just an allegory. I believe they took it literal. And on this dissonance or privilege verse um, of the Bible that I took in the New Testament, I was thinking of it, and there's just such a stark difference between conventional Christianity and Islam, but there's also similar things, like how uh, Muslims are very against like reading of the Quran in certain translations or without the Arabic at all. Most of them are against that. And there's Christians like I believe Tippy Bear is one. She's always saying, read from the King James, and she has her reasons why she wants to read from the King James. And then you have, and it kind of goes hand in hand, I guess, with Islam in a way, where Islam, some of it, if they're going to give you a, mosques hand out what Quran they approve of. It's not like if you go to a Barnes and Noble business or something, and then you have a variety of Qurans and Bibles to pick out. No, you always get taught whatever it is the person was taught before you, essentially, right? So they kind of have that in common. And I just think Muslims are very much across the world, it feels like, unapologetic towards what they have to believe, and Christians are definitely a lot more where they'll adopt or deflect. They don't even really feel like they have to talk about a certain thing uh as allegorical or literal. They'll just, like this guy, he believes. In this video that I made, I had a clip from Big Questions from the UK or someplace like that. And this Christian was asked if he believed in a woman being turned into salt, Lot's wife. And he said he believed it because Jesus believed it. And this little part here, the part before it was, let's see here. Oh yeah, this is about the prophets, that the scripture came about by the prophet's own interpretations of things. Above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by the prophet's own interpretation of things. For prophecy never had its origins in the human will, but prophets, though human, spoke from God as they carried along by the Holy Spirit. Now, uh, it it goes to this thing that you're supposed to believe everything they really say, you know, and the story shouldn't be not taken literally. I love how if the very beginning, and I'm not saying all Christians are like this, there are plenty of Christians who believe the Bible is inerrant historical fact, you know, uh, uh, theologically fact too, not just historically. They, but they're getting outnumbered more in Christianity with this concept of um, allegorical takings, metaphorical, the beginning. But if the very beginning of your book is allegorical, and there's Christians out there who believe that hell is allegorical, they're a very small number. Um, they're kind of like the Majid Nawaz of Christians, right? Like, because Majid Nawaz doesn't believe in hellfire. He says it's all allegorical. So, but if and you can get into 3:7 of the Quran against him about that, but I'm sure he'd never want to talk about it. Uh, but if you're, let's say, a Christian or even a Jew, or a Hindu, whoever, and you believe that the very beginning is allegorical or metaphorical, and the very end is allegorical and metaphorical. But there are some parts that it becomes completely believable, I guess. You know, any part can be believable if you are leaving it open that much, in my opinion. And that's kind of what I was thinking about covering a little bit today. Um, if if you don't have to believe how the people believed that were the first ones to believe, and uh, that just shows that you I don't believe you're dissonant. I believe you're privileged because you can get away with not believing in certain things, right? Nowadays, it's more, you know, that's more acceptable. It just popped in my mind, like when I was talking to Kenny Bowman one time, and he mentioned that there was no Quran, uh, that there's no miracle or fact in the Quran that has been proven untrue after 1400 years. And the first thing that popped in my mind was saying, yeah, but how many of those 1400 years have been safe for people to try to prove something wrong about the Quran? You can't say all of it, because there's still places today that just speaking out and trying to point out something that you believe is wrong about it, even if it's not, maybe it is one of those allegorical parts, but you just think it's so allegorically wrong that it's a horrible mistake. And that's not even to this day how the whole world is. So this privilege of being able to just believe whatever just because it's you're free to, you know. I'm sure that if it became like, and in the video I was talking about dissonance or privileged Christians, I show like some statements about the Pope and from the Pope, and then just articles, I guess you'd say. And I guess the Pope was smart enough to say we need to start distancing ourselves from strict creationist religion to at least being open to it being metaphorical. He just wanted to take like that pinky toe of orthodox over the line, but it makes sense for the religion to gain and keep growing. They need that religious privilege that they have now that they don't. they didn't really have back then. It's like I just don't believe that that there were many Jews before Christianity, that even before then, that felt like if they went against their religion as being 100% true and that they should follow everything about it, that they would have been punished. I just believe that it makes more sense than this concept that the first believers of any religion really didn't believe it wholeheartedly, as they would say, because for some reason the heart does more than just pump blood to most, pretty much all religions, even the Egyptians, right? They just scrambled up the brains, but they took the heart out and um, put it aside with all the other organs, and then they mummified people, right? So that's another commonality that goes, in my opinion, with religion. This concept that the heart controls so much. You know, you could say Judaism and Christianity both have it because even uh, Pharaoh, if Pharaoh's heart was hardened, would go with the concept that the heart has something to do. But of course, that's allegorical, isn't it? And that's the religious privilege that I'm talking about that I feel people have today. Where if you told a Jewish person 1,000 years ago that Pharaoh's heart wasn't really hardened in the sense of either God's will or that you tried to say it took an allegorical stance, I don't believe that they would take it that way. Something as small as that. And then on this video of Christian privilege or dissonance, uh, I also showed that Jesus it speaks of it being true. That the beginning creation is true. At least for the you take it at what it is, I guess you could say, where he mentions, I'll just give you the quote. If he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example. So that's at least 2 parts, I guess you'd say, of the Old Testament that Jesus does believe. You know, that's just what he propagated. And for people to now say, oh, well, we don't have to believe that Sodom and Gomorrah is true and literal. Well, Muslims have kept that. You know, they that's I'd say a person turning into a pillar of salt makes it one of the pillars of Islam. Am I right? Islam has to have at least 6 pillars because there's a pillar of salt in the story. But Muslims don't, I would say they don't take uh, Islamic privilege seriously, I guess. But Islamic privilege is funny to me because they'll do that about certain hadiths, even if they're Sahi. I actually watched a Christian Prince video the other day because I saw this channel. Uh, he called in to debate him or whatever, and I've talked to this channel before. I've heard his live streams. We've communicated, and I was thinking, man, he really thinks he can call in to Christian Prince. Like, and I wasn't trying to, because I'm not the biggest fan of Christian Prince. I don't really like his style a whole lot, but he is knowledgeable. There's no doubt about that. He's really fast. He can be funny and stuff. I just don't like his style, but he's very knowledgeable. I'll say that. And the channel Go Live Media, um, he thought he could call up and debate him, and it was hilarious to me. You know, as soon as I didn't even listen to it. I said, "Oh, this is going to be bad for Go Live." It really is, because he, you know, is one of those, "Well, let me see the Arabic, let me see the Hadith, let me, talk Arabic, see if this guy knows," and Christian Prince is all of that. So it's it was just so funny. Um, but to get back to the privilege part, Muslims, use privilege on hadiths more than the Quran. Like, the Quran is pretty specific about how you have to believe it all. Even 3:7 of the Quran, speaks how, there are those the ones who are trying to lead people astray, like cause mischief, are the ones who are using it allegorically, right? So you really can't take that privilege in Islam. Allah done struck that down for you. And in 3:7 of the Quran, he says that the true Muslims say that we believe in it, in the whole of it. So Allah definitely, if maybe that's a prophecy of Allah, He actually shut down, religious privilege for the Muslims in a way. You're like, nope. Now they can do that with hadiths, and that's one reason that they always try to. What's the hadith number? Let me see the Arabic. Da, 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 da. Yeah, those are good questions to have and stuff. But what you're really doing is trying to privilege your way out of not accepting that you think, a 6-year-old girl could be married, you know, and they'll say, well, let's check the hadith narrations. Let's do this. All the stories of Muhammad, what makes you think that that's not a true story? Unless you just don't believe that in like the Muhammad of the Quran is the Muhammad in the Hadith 100% of the time, but then you'd have to justify why you believe certain ones are, and a lot of times, if you read the Quran, openly about itself, you can take from it the hadiths that probably are the most sahih, without having any chain narrations, because Muhammad was very limiting to chain narrations. He did not want, non-Muslims, let's say that, to have any concept about his narration, where he's coming from. Only the companions could be trusted with that, right? But the Quranist type Muslim who doesn't believe in hadith at all, I wouldn't say that's privileged, because and most Quranists believe wholeheartedly that the whole Quran is true, that they're not allowed to take things allegorically. That's what they actually, are taking from the text. Um, and the reason I would say they're not privileged on that is because, like I said, with Go Live Media, he wants to know the source number. He wants to see the Arabic. He wants to, say it out loud. And yeah, that's a good quality to have. But sometimes you just have to realize that if you're having to just start debate your religion based off of just certain stories, right? And then when certain of those stories, um, are ranked such as authentic, but you have to privilege yourself away from that somehow. Not dissonance. I mean, uh, even the Muslims who are against child marriage, let's say, they like Quranists and stuff. They're like, oh well, uh, there is no ruling on age. I have met this one Quranist, but I definitely, who, claim that the Quran does have an age for child marriage. He's gone through this Quranist system, as he called it, I believe. But, it's not backed up by just being a Quranist. In no way. You know, Allah gave the spectrum, right, of, uh, those who have stopped menstruating and those who have, menstruated not. So, you can't really privilege your way out of that, because of all the stories that are Sahih of, let's say, Muhammad, most of them would cast Muhammad on a negative light by Western standards. and even second world country standards, let's just be honest. There's parts of the world where that are second world, as we would refer to them, or third world, whatever, and, they're better than Islamic countries, that's for sure. Uh, but this concept of Muslim privilege or Islamic privilege would be different, you know? Of course, it comes down to, this Islam, you challenge it and you're considered a racist or a xenophobe or as Islamophobe, and I've talked about this before. I believe that we did a huge disservice when we started going from phobic being an actual like a person who's irrationally fearful of something, and we've come to this point where if you're mean to somebody or you say something somebody doesn't like, then that's phobic. You know, uh, I don't believe the reason that they did that is because now more people can be labeled a negative term such as homophobic, right? But I believe that the number of people who are uh, just psychologically unable to overcome an irrational fear of homosexuals, you know, I believe the number of people who are like that, like who are going to walk down the street and see two men holding hands and think that that instantly turns them gay. I don't believe that type of phobia happens, or like I don't believe that the numbers would be very high in Western societies, at least, where you believe that if some dude tries to just hug you, that it's going to turn you gay or that he wants to have sex with you. So, I just, and they did that with Islamophobia. With Islam, they really made it such a privilege to be of a religion. you know, like you could be white, you could be black, Asian, Latino, uh, a minority. What I'm saying is a minority wherever you are. And if you're a Muslim, there you go. Then you're a double minority. Congratulations. Unless you're uh, in Islamic countries, then you just better be able to abide by the rules. But this Islamophobic privilege that they passed on, it's very fortunate for that religion. But they don't really have belief privilege, as I was discussing with the Jewish people and the Christians and stuff like that, who essentially are fleeing more towards allegorical, just take away the principle, just live your life by these hidden meanings inside of these stories that aren't necessarily true. And I just think that's privileged that they're able to have that belief um, years after we've had all this technology and growth and knowledge, and they can just discard it. It's what, and I could see that being used against me, right? Saying, "Oh, you're an atheist, so if the science changes, you change." Well, if there's compilable evidence, it will make sense. Like, what was it? About a month ago, I think, they found two like dust discs, I want to say, of that are satellites of our planet, along with our moon. You know, and when when they found that, why wouldn't I believe it? They've been theorizing it for something like like 50 years, 40, 50 years. They just didn't have the technology to prove it. Uh, and now we do in the man hours. Sorry about that. But so why wouldn't I believe that? And that's not privilege. That's like you could do the same thing, right? If you're a religious person, you could uh you could just accept like science as it continues to grow, and that wouldn't make it a belief either. It would make it the most reliable source of data is what we're looking for. I just That's the common umbrella word of science, I guess. Sometimes I don't like using the word science because mathematics is also inside there, but humans have had math for very long. I mean, but look how long it took them to develop zero, right? Nobody ever cared to figure out how to say I had to show, like, symbolize not having anything. How much did they have in the past? Maybe this concept that everybody in the past had horrible lives is just wrong because they never had to develop zero, right? They never. They just always thought there was more and more stuff. Like, how they never figured out a way to symbolize not having an apple, right? Like, the you'd have, like, I guess, 3 pictures of people, and then above 2 heads would be apples, and then 1 person without an apple, and they don't know how to mark it. They don't want they don't wanna create a way to show 0 because they had everything. They did and they needed not. Oh, man. That was making me laugh even harder the other day when I was first thinking about it. And I can't remember who I talked to about that. I would also say that that would be a huge difference between, the sciences, I guess I should say, the sciences and religion, uh, especially with they'll try to say that uh, just thinking that science is a great way to live as far as like proving things, trying to make predictions and such. They think that that becomes a religion. But even when the weatherman tells me that tomorrow might be cloudy and brisk, I'm probably not going to believe him because he's not always a good weatherman. He's he tries his best, man, but damned weather. You can't always predict it. He might be a degree or two off. Okay. So there might be all of a sudden a gust of wind that he did not predict. So I'm okay with that. That's not a form of privilege to say that uh, as the data comes in, as the information, as the mathematics grow, that you'll take more and more from those than something that you believe is all the data. If God is nothing else, he's just like this big data beast. He knows everything, right? He's got the whole universe. He is the whole universe to some, you know. He's already accumulated all of it, but hasn't discussed any of it, right? He's he never told anybody that gravity falls at 9.8 meters per second, but he knew it. He had the data. God has the data, but never decided to mention it to anybody. God knew that there is a such thing as zero and there's nothing, and you can symbolize it, but he sure as shit didn't want anybody else to know it. he's he's gonna make human existence miserable instead. Dying by wisdom teeth. Like a broke bone inside, just a small bone, and then getting gangrene and having your limbs chopped off and hope you can make it. Zero is not important to the betterment of human experience, because God is not going to tell you that. You know. Also, your God is never going to tell you that uh, slavery is abhorrent. There, here's the thing: God could have known the appropriate words to use, right? At least I would be able to say, he used the word abhorrent and said slavery is it. I would always have that quote. Like, but nobody can ever bring that quote to me because it doesn't exist, out of the Abrahamic religions and pretty much all religions, really, slavery is just like, dude, do it. If do it or it will be done to you. That's like that Muslim. He kept saying that the whole world's philosophy. He was on a channel. That was Vegeta, I think is his name. And he says, it's 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 get it or it'll get got. you know, it's live or die. It's penetrate or be penetrated. And so, whoa, dude, people just can't like relax. Why you got and especially if you're a Muslim, you don't really control anything. Christians have come to this concept where they believe that the free will steps in. And even though God knows what you're gonna do, you still have free will, even though he created everything, knowing what it's gonna end at and who's gonna be Christian and who's not. He could just skip forward at any moment, but they still don't believe that when something bad happens, right, that it was unavoidable, I guess you would say most of the time, but when something bad happens, a percentage of Christians tend to say it was God's plan. Not a lot of them, because it's a tragic moment. They don't want to say that. I'd say, you know, uh, they don't want to say that it's not God's plan, as opposed to saying, I guess that's the way of saying this happened and there's still free will, you know, because I'm of the belief that if you believe that there is this thing that knows everything, is all powerful, knows the future, and knows every action that's ever going to happen before he even creates the universe, right? And then he creates the universe and he still knows what's going to happen. And then he creates humans. He still knows what's going to happen. And then it comes down to me. He does already know what's going to happen, but where this comes, I guess, to separate their free will concept is that a Christian said to me the other day, choosing to obey is free will. God's will, God's plan, I guess. And the funny thing about that is, how can you choose? you know, how can you choose if the day before God already knew when the moment would come up if you would obey or disobey? I've always thought there was just this huge theological hole in religion based off that question. If free will exists, then God knows what you're going to do. He created you for a certain purpose, right? The plan, the God's plan. And unless you're saying people get created just for random reasons, but I don't really know any theology that goes with that. I would say religious people kind of use against atheists or agnostics, even, I guess you would say, disbelievers, because a form of privilege, right? Like they say, well, we have a book and it tells everything. We don't believe that everything just came from random. Who says I think things came randomly? If you believe that everything has to have a creator, right? Except for your God, then it's self-created. Not even self-created, it's just self-aware, you know? Before obedience to weird things, rituals, you have to first believe weird things. For God knows what reasons why people come to some or all of the beliefs they come to. All right. Well, yeah. uh, If you don't believe in a God, it's just what people believe, right? But in your questioning, the way you say, "For God knows what reasons why people come to some or all of religion," that would if you just say that as a religious person, you know, it's a lot differently than saying as an atheist or agnostic, right? Because if you say like, "God only knows why," as a believer in it, then it's taken like seriously, even though that person most of the time says it jokingly. But to an atheist or an agnostic, someone who doesn't believe, like, yeah, God only knows, right? That's I've never heard that. I'm glad. I'm about to become religious simply because I heard only God knows. Only God knows why. Yeah, that changed my whole life. You know? I'm glad we met. That was part of God's plan right there, wasn't it? That's the privilege. It's kinda like it took all this data, all this, ability, years, uh, experience to get the internet right, and now religious people can just act like God gave them the internet. Like, you can just act it's been 20 years, dude. Add a religious twist to it. It's been around for 25 years. It can become, more mythical, allegorical. The internet 100 years, the internet, whenever there's something new and the internet is so old and not even used anymore, when we're just sending, thoughts through like brains. It will be an allegory. The memes. What will memes be? you know. But I do think it's kind of a privilege for them to just say, "Oh no, we," th- and they feel privileged on that, right? That they have this book that they believe is 100%. No other book could ever compare to it. And even inside of that, you'll have things like some Muslims or Christians only wanting you to read certain translations or certain scriptures. Like when it comes to Tippy Bear, mostly I'll find it in Islam. I don't really hear most Christians ever complaining too much about which translation they're reading, but for some reason in Islam, they most Muslims, they are very strict. No, that's not Yusuf Ali. I've heard a guy say that's not Yusuf Ali's. All right, big deal. Not you, but I've heard Tippy Bear, a Christian. She's very and go good warning people, I think is his name. They're both very King James version. Even when warning good people goes onto a channel and introduces himself, he says, I'm a Christian. I read the King James Bible." That's his quote. He wants it known. But Tippy, anytime you read something that's not King James, you're like, just read it. Just go to King James. It's the better translation. All these people have uh what they think is the best translation. It's funny to me that a book that the oldest form of the religious book, really, like King James version in English, right? The oldest form for English speaking Christians, they're saying is the best when words have adapted, words have evolved. We have better ways to describe things. You don't even speak in Old English, but you think your Bible should. Like God, what is it? Maybe that's why they just love the concept of God speaking perfect, 15th century English grammar. It's so becoming of thy Lord. Did you say thy? It's in the Bible, man. I read it the other day. The word "thy" is there, so I try to use it, try to be more holy, bro. Everybody knows that. Oh, speaking of that, when I was in New York one time, I went and saw the Gutenberg, Bible, right? Clearly states, "Do not take pictures." Motherfuckers taking pictures with their with their cell phones. It's just, why are we gonna need that book? I already posted the picture on Instagram, man. Go ahead, take pictures of it. Just destroy it through flash photography. Don't matter, man. I got it on my fucking phone now. It's on my Instagram. People know it existed, man. If it was on someone else's Instagram, it would not exist. I'll tell you that. Um, on Discord, or you have a Discord? I think I've started a Discord so I could join like a gin and tonic and and Titans TV was wanting to do Discord there for a while. Um, when he was getting away from YouTube, I guess a little bit, and so I'm on Titans TV's Discord and uh, Gin and Tonic. I really haven't messed with it, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of the format. I don't think the audio works that well over there. I know that Google Hangouts does have its problems from time to time, but generally, uh, the speed and the connection is, in my opinion, better. Uh, and I do like Discord in the sense that you can constantly re-chat better as you're live streaming. You can stay on one screen and read the chat, right? But if I'm live streaming on um, Hangouts, I have to open up a YouTube video to read the comments. So I like both. I like both of them. Um, I just feel like Google Hangouts is a better platform. And man, I'm not really sure what else to talk about. I was talking about that. You know, when on my last channel, I'd have, at times 15 people watching, which is good. And it actually spurred questions and debates and stuff. This one is just me 40 minutes nonstop with some water, moving from one topic to another. That's how we do it here. We'll try to tie it all around to religious privilege at the end, I guess, and then ramble on. Stop being so Islamophobic. I can't be, man. Allah made me this way. Allah made me Islamophobic. It's not my fault. He did not choose to guide me. That's unacceptable, man. I'm going to have Allah change that about me so that one day I'll be acceptable to him. The Jinn and Titan, yeah, and the Titans, yeah, they seem dead. I just it feels like its own thing. You have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Hangouts, you have all these other things, and then you have Discord. I like it in general, but I always have problem with the audio, right? It it seems to me that it's very choppy. But I like the chat layout in the center of the screen. There's no video. That's something that they really need to add on. People just like being able to look at a screen as opposed to, you know, um, just that blue stuff and the chat. And because it's just like right now, I can, at least on Hangouts, I can screen share. If I wanted to, the whole time, if I wanted to, while I was talking, I could have been showing you that I'm on this video that I was speaking about at the beginning, dissonance or privileged Christians of YouTube. Now, I had the option not to do that, but I haven't even seen like pictures being uploaded onto Discord. So you can't even like do memes. I haven't seen any memes. So it's just weird. You know, it seems like a lackluster one. But it is a good community concept. I liked it. We got Titans TV over here. Muhammad against Christ, against Jesus Christ. A better future. I bet it's packed with people just. We could check it out if y'all want. Watch a live stream commentary on a live stream commentary. Can y'all hear the video, or should I take the head? I should probably switch it. Give me just a moment, and we'll listen to these guys. Just a real person. All right, there we go.
It was his primary purpose. But if you go to the book of John, he said, "And I have and other sheep I have that." Sorry, hold on.
Well, I hope y'all can hear that. Just converted, burn, hellfire. That simple.
Yeah, it's John 10:16. So it says, "And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd." So what he's saying is, yes, he came for the lost sheep of Israel, but there were other sheep not of that fold who would be brought into the fold. So in terms of who Jesus was the fulfillment.
Before you go all of there, hold on. Who are those other sheep then? Who are those other sheep?
The other sheep.
Why do humans have to be considered sheep? You know? Why can't they just be human?
Let's keep you there. I'm trying to focus on this. He said he meant other sheep, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree this relates to those who are lost sheep?
No.
They're not.
No.
No. He said, "I have come for the lost sheep."
No. This is what I'm saying. I want you to pay attention now, yeah? The term sheep are people that need a shepherd. He's the shepherd, correct?
Yeah.
Right. What I'm saying to you, he said he come to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All his teachings for all those years, who are they for?
Israelites.
Okay. So what teachings did he leave for these Gentiles that you're talking about?
Say that again.
Okay, no, I'll leave that to another debate because that's a smash.
Oh, I'll say that, and then I'll leave that because I slammed you without telling you.
Jesus said, "I'm here sent to Gentiles," right? But the context here is a non-Jew woman is asking for a miracle because her daughter is being sick. So he showed them quick thing, and she's asking for a miracle, and he's saying, "I'm here for the Gentiles. I'm here for the she's begging him, please, my daughter's sick. She might have cancer, whatever is the cause. And I don't know, he's saying basically, all right, she'll be freed from her sickness, and she was healed. So this is, for those who have never seen it, it's Matthew 15. This is when he still having fulfilled the covenant, the prophecy, is still working within the first covenant. When Christ has been crucified.
Hold on 1 sec, sorry. Why did you miss out 10, 5, and 6?
Oh, call out on leaving out the. Why'd you leave that out, bro?
I'm starting with 24.
And then that's very funny to me. Muslims and Christians and people, why'd you leave that out? Tippy Bear tried to do that to me the other day. I showed 9 versions of the same verse, and she says, "Why'd you just show? You didn't even show the whole one, man." Yeah, okay, but that I think that's funny. Like, why don't you talk about this? Where's the context?
No, I'm saying Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 and 6.
No, I'm Matthew 15 right now.
I know. Saying, why would you miss out?
Why didn't you mention? Why shouldn't he start at Matthew 1:1? Hell, why didn't he start at Genesis, bro? Because that's not the verse he's reading.
The other part that relates to this about who Jesus is something.
Well, I haven't really got to that passage. Okay, so
do you know what it says?
No, but let me just finish this.
But I don't care.
Is that right?
No problem, bro.
Okay. So yeah, once he has actually been crucified and resurrected, the old covenant is gone. It's something of past history. So do you guys know about this? This is actually found in the Hebrew, that Old Testament or a covenant, or what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? When you die and your will, what do you call it? Testament, right? That's what you call it. Hebrew 9.
Tequila.
Oh, okay, paper.
Yeah, can you just jump to Jeremiah 23:3?
So in Hebrew, 9:16 says that a testament is not enforced until the person is dead. So now Christ has been crucified and he's resurrected. Let's see now what he says when he's crucified. This is Matthew 28. Now the testament of Christ is open for the whole world. Here it is. And afterward I'll go to your passage. Now Christ is saying the following. He's changing his word. Jesus is saying this. Let's take a look at this. Let's see if I can happen. Here it is. Jesus is saying, now the authority of heaven and earth has been given to me.
Okay, sorry about that, y'all. I was doing something. But all right, I'm probably gonna hop off here. I appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you here next time.